What if I told you that data was your secret weapon? It's better for making decisions, persuading people, and even prepping for the future. The problem is that most people just get overwhelmed by the numbers and they just feel like they're drowning. I'm joined by Melissa Carpenter, and she graduated from a data analytics program that's run by the military. So, whether you're a leader, you're an entrepreneur, or you're just trying to make better decisions in your daily life, she's here to help you learn how to use data effectively. So Melissa's going to cover three things: why data is actually a little bit more important than you think, how to ask the right questions, and then what you need to learn to use data without becoming that data scientist. All right, Melissa, let's start with a big question. Thanks for being on. Why do so many people just tune out when they hear the word data?
Hi, Dr. Moyer. Thank you so much for having me today. I think, like me and many other people that I know, especially those of us who fall into the dreadful millennial category, data is scary. It's this big four-letter word, right? That a lot of people don't really know what it means. It can mean a lot of things, and it makes people just a little bit nervous. And I think as human beings, a lot of us run on fear, and so we get shied away from it or fear it. And I think that's a lot of people's initial reaction.
Oh, definitely. I think nothing makes me a little bit more anxious than opening up a big Excel spreadsheet. Although I think there's some people that love that. So for those that are listening that enjoy that, we need you in our lives.
For real, I appreciate those people very much. I will say I'm still not one of them.
So I find that interesting, right? Because you say you're not a data person, but you actually did a whole I think it was a 2 year program or a year and a half
Mhm.
program. So how like what do you mean when you're not a data person but you've learned about data?
So I went into the program being the type of person who likes to ask questions.
Hmm.
And I also had prior experience in a core part of the military that deals with a lot of data.
Hmm.
So I have, I'm a people person and I like to help people solve problems.
Hmm.
And that's a very important part of data. So thankfully, I was in the program with a lot of folks who like to look at large Excel spreadsheets. And so I
Yeah.
learned from them. And then in turn, I helped them be able to take that data, use it practically, and answer
Hmm.
people's questions and solve people's problems in a way that they could understand.
Yeah. Yeah. Oh, I love that. Could you give an example? I mean, I'd love to see. I know you guys worked on some projects
Mhm.
of really where data really helped inform or made a difference for a leader.
Oh, absolutely. So one project that we worked that was really interesting and eye-opening was we were contacted by the basic military training center at Lackland, where all of Department of Air Force airmen and guardians at this time come through into their initial training into the military service. And
Okay.
in their first week of training, they take a mental health test.
Hmm.
And the test is administered by a third party company that the Air Force has a contract through. And what they were looking at is the test financially worth to keep
Hmm.
on the grounds of
Yeah.
is it identifying those airmen that maybe have mental health issues, and are we identifying them and helping them, or are we realizing that it may not, the military might not be the right place for them, and is that process working? And so what we did was we took the data and painted numerous pictures for them.
Hmm.
So being able to visualize the data in a way that's understandable
Yeah.
and visually explains what the data shows.
Hmm.
And I think it was very eye-opening to them because they were expecting or had made assumptions based on what they thought the data was going to show, and the data actually showed them the opposite. And
Hmm.
so although they didn't like the outcome, they were grateful that we had utilized the data and helped them visualize the data
Mhm.
effectively and helped them make a data-driven decision that was the
Yeah.
most fiscally responsible for the military.
Yeah. I love, like, I got an image of you when you talked about creating pictures for people, right?
Hmm.
Because numbers, ones and zeros, like our brains don't comprehend that well. But then when
Hmm.
you start to put that into charts or graphs, we then can start to develop that. And I find it really interesting that they kind of had a preconceived notion. So
Hmm.
it's it's I think about how many times do I have that where I go, oh, I'm sure that maybe it's the customers we work with are going to act a certain way, and then that's actually not true. It's not what the data says. So,
Yeah, I think
um,
that happens a lot.
yes, I know. So I think you mentioned, like, so one mistake when we talk about data in general is maybe assuming what we think the results are going to be.
Hmm.
In your experience when you worked on projects, what were some of the other mistakes that you saw, whether it was how someone interacted with data, how someone reviewed it, just things to kind of, for our listeners to be aware of when they're starting to jump into this world?
So I think the number one thing is try as hard as you can to not have a preconceived notion of what your outcome is going to be. And that's very hard for us as human beings to do. We we like to predict our outcomes. We like to pretend like we know what's going to happen. It's probably a survival mechanism at its core, but being more open and allowing the data to show you what's happening and being okay with that is a skill that everyone can learn, but
Mm-hmm.
it isn't easy. And sometimes people are reluctant to hear or see, but if you take the time to show what the data is explaining in a
Mm-hmm.
way that is readily digestible, people are more apt to ingest that.
Mm. Oh, I love that. Oh, it's almost like intellectual curiosity, maybe.
Hmm.
So
Yes.
where do you start if you've decided that you want to get better at using data? Like,
Hmm.
what's something that you can do today? Like, you get off here and you decide, all right, I'm going to be more comfortable with data. Where would you start?
So there's really easy places that are completely free to start. Uh, Honestly, YouTube will answer a lot of questions. So I know that sounds crazy, but if you say, I want to learn how to use Excel better, there's free options out there. You don't have to spend money to learn any of this.
Mhm.
If you want to um, just start by most questions or most issues have a root cause
Mhm.
and you can utilize tools. You don't have to know everything. You can utilize tools to help you figure out the best way to answer that question. So if you use an AI mechanism such as Copilot, which is Microsoft's product, or ChatGPT, the military has Nipper GPT or Camo GPT. There's so many options out there that help you learn how to best answer a question. And you can literally
Mhm.
ask it the most elementary juvenile question and then
Yeah.
build upon that to help teach yourself how to best solve a problem.
Mhm.
And it's
I
free.
like the Oh yeah. Yeah, free 99, right?
Yes.
I like the thought process of if I don't know how to do something, being able to use that, search function and
Hmm.
just starting there because sometimes it's that judgment area. I think a lot of us as leaders don't like to maybe admit that we don't know how to do something, which is a little silly when you think about it.
Hmm.
But that sort of the AI hopefully isn't going to judge you. Maybe the next versions of it will say like, "You didn't know that." but that is a really cool thing that um, instead of getting stuck if you're at work and you don't know how to do something. Probably someone else has figured it out. So I love that there's just as more data actually comes into those systems, you can do that. So it's
Hmm.
pretty fantastic. Um, so I was reading this article, and it said that you have to be really careful about data because it talked about like bad data, right? And bad data can cause bad questions, bad conclusions, right? And they were talking less about data being clean, right, and structured, right, and more so about this concept of like knowing how to analyze data. And so, what is a mistake that people make when they're trying to analyze data?
So, on the same vein of
Mm.
going in with preconceived notions,
Mhm.
there are ways to utilize your data for your agenda, and
Mhm.
that's not productive. So, where I work currently, I work in a financial setting,
Mhm.
and money is magic. I am learning, and that it can, you can utilize it you can
Mhm.
utilize the numbers and the information to paint numerous pictures depending on who your audience is and the image you're trying to have.
Mhm.
Now, all data can do that, and you have to be very careful because having information is great. Collecting all the pieces of data and integrating them and putting them together is
Mhm.
great, but sometimes it's untruthful or it's
Yeah.
only partially true. And you need to make sure that you're going as deep as you possibly can and asking why and
Okay.
how
Yeah.
and where does this come from. So you need
Mhm.
to know all of those things, which that a
Mhm.
machine can't do. You have to
Mhm.
be intuitive and you have to ask the questions and you have to really dig deep, because if you don't do that, garbage in is going to end up being garbage out, and that's not helpful to anyone. I think a lot of the time I have seen both in the private sector and in the military
Mhm.
very large, expensive decisions can be made based on bad data, and that
Mhm.
ends up not being good for anyone. So you do have to take a step back, take a moment and go, okay, what am I missing?
Mhm.
What do I have that I don't need? And where can I go to get help?
Yeah. Yeah. Well, and it's almost like I see two scenarios. So in one scenario, you are the person that's working on the project.
Mm-hmm.
And so you need to be like making sure the data is structured, and then you can kind of tag it properly. And you've thought about, you can explain maybe your step-by-step process. But the other side is like you are a decision maker or you're a leader, and your team comes to you and your team tells you, hey, absolutely, we're seeing a trend in failed fitness assessments, right?
Mm.
So I'm that leader. What questions do I ask that team? Because I don't know the data that came in. I don't know how they did it, but I don't feel comfortable because I've never touched this before. What questions can I ask that team that sort of create that check and balance?
That's a really good question. So, and I've had this experience. So this comes back to the same thing that I said before. So if someone were to come to me and say, I have this information and we can use fitness assessments. That's a perfect example because I recently did a project about fitness assessments uh,
There you
for
go.
the Air Force.
Mhm.
So asking why is so
Mhm.
important. And it doesn't have to come off as offensive or rude or judgmental at all. Just
Mhm.
having them explain how they got to the answer they got to will
Mhm.
usually answer all the questions that you have
Mm.
when they lay it out for you in an easy to follow process. Now, where you get
Okay.
really nervous and when you want to double check, trust but verify, right, If
Yeah.
they can't explain to you how they got to the answer they got to, that throws red flags for me. And then I want to go back and verify the work that has been done. And that's not anything against the team. That's not anything against the data. It's just, this is your organization or your business or your job on the line too. And you want to make sure that what's being done is correct.
Yeah.
But it all starts with asking why.
Okay. So really breaking what they say, like ask why like multiple times, but
Five
you're
times.
asking them
Mhm.
to, yeah, break down the thought process, explain how you went from each step. And then
Mhm.
if they can't explain it, then it's like, okay, hey, let's, let's go back to the drawing board, whether it's a diagram or something to get that clarity. Okay.
And you can either verbally explain why, or you
Mm-hmm.
can visually explain why. Honestly, I
Mm.
prefer the visual way
Okay.
because
Is it like
then
a flow
as a
chart
leader,
or
whether it's a
like,
flow chart, you could use a Gantt chart, or you could utilize, say you built a product,
okay.
a dashboard in Power BI. On the
Mm-hmm.
back end of that dashboard, you can show how you could say you had like 6 or 7 different sources of data. You can show the table view and you can see all of those sources of data,
Yeah.
and you can show how you connected them and why you did X filters, or why you did this quick measure equation and that kind of stuff. You can show all of that visually,
Mm-hmm.
and you can see, okay, this makes sense. This is why we're following this process. This flow makes sense to me.
Mm-hmm.
Where if your team can't, it's really just proofing your work. And
Yeah.
if they're not able to do that, then
Mm.
that's probably cause for a little bit of concern.
Okay. You just took me back to literally, math class where the teacher said like, you have to show your work, right? And I thought we
Yes,
were over that, but apparently in the world of data, the the showing your work
we're
never goes
never
away.
over showing our work. It's like our taxes. You have to show your work.
Yeah. Oh gosh. Oh, I love it. So when I look at the metrics, right, I think a lot of
Mhm.
times I've seen dashboards and it's a ton of information. And it's because I've maybe I want a dashboard. I want to know everything about my organization from the finances to the people to equipment, right?
Mhm.
But what is the difference between, I've heard this term like vanity metrics
Mhm.
versus actual metrics? Because I mean, you could literally put in front of me metrics that don't matter. And how do I know
Mhm.
that those aren't actually like important?
So that happens a lot.
Hmm.
And I really like the term vanity metrics, because how I see it is, like when you have a ring light in front of you, everything looks beautiful and there's no wrinkles. But when you move the light, it's like, oh, you're a human. Oh, okay.
Yeah.
Um, so I equate vanity metrics to forcing a positive picture.
Okay.
So if it feels forced, if it
Hmm.
feels too good to be true, it
Hmm.
probably is. And you'll see
Hmm.
things like this a lot. So take the example of, oh, our sales were up 125% over last year. Okay, that's amazing. How much was our personnel cost?
Yeah.
Oh, well, that doesn't
Yeah.
matter. Our sales are up 125% from
Yeah.
last year. Okay,
Yeah.
wonderful. How much was our personnel cost?
Yes.
Oh,
Yep.
well, actually, that's up 150%. So actually, we're down 25% from last year.
Hmm.
Okay, there's the truth. I want the whole picture.
Yep.
You have to force, or
Hmm.
you have to create an environment that produces the ability to of trust, or the you have to have an atmosphere of trust
Yeah.
so that your team will be able to show you the truth. And it
Hmm.
comes back to
Hmm.
the
Yeah.
discussion I was talking about with numbers. You have to make sure that you're showing the whole picture, because
Hmm.
sometimes NIAD isn't the whole truth. I want to see net income.
Yeah.
Um, so vanity metrics
Um,
are great when you're trying to sell something. I think
yeah.
a used car dealership comes to mind immediately.
Yeah. Yeah.
Okay, it's only got 50,000 miles on it, but it flooded. 2 years ago. So,
by the
you
way.
need the whole picture. Give me the Carfax,
Mhm.
please. Um, does that
Yeah.
make sense?
Yeah, and I think it leads something that as a leader, you have to really communicate. You talked about trust. You have to say that red is okay, right?
Hmm.
Or that downward thing trends are okay. Um, because sometimes we get trained to look for what's wrong, and I think that that's
Mm,
very good. But that if your teams goes like, well, if I hand something that looks green and they look at it and then they put it back down, oh, well, I can just keep on doing that, right? And so we've
right.
reinforced, oh, well, if the numbers look good, then that's all we really care about. And so really thinking through, um, what what are those, you communicating what are those things that are important to you, and then if there is a trend, well, we want to know about that, because then we can maybe take some steps, or we can just ask the team, hey, I've noticed that we have, individuals that have taken a lot more leave recently. I want
Mm,
to make sure everyone is, like, maybe it's not a problem because maybe it's during the holiday season, right?
sure.
Or, but it's just like, are you looking at that information and are you then trying to ask clarifying questions about it? Or are you
Hmm.
saying, this is bad, this is good? Um, I think what I've learned from you is that it's not necessarily good or bad. It's just, here's what it's showing us.
Hmm.
Now, how do we dig into it and start to see, the relationships, or, during COVID, there weren't any data on PT tests. So was that green or red? Well, it depended on how maybe a data analyst wanted to present that information. So,
Yeah. So I go back in the days on the flight line. Collecting data is so important, right? And trend analysis is such a big deal on the flight line.
mhm.
And there can be a break that is continuously happening, and that kind of data is tracked.
Yeah.
Unfortunately, on I don't want to say the soft skills side, but on the non-hard side of the military, we don't do as good of a job as tracking trend analysis
Yeah.
as well as aircraft maintenance. So
Mm-hmm. Mm.
keeping an eye on those things, I think leave is a really good example. Why do I have 25% of my workforce that's trying to take leave right now? What's going on? Is everyone really stressed
Yeah.
out? Is there
Yeah.
something going on in the is there something overarching? Is it something about the unit? That's a really good
Yeah.
example. Um, are we trending down on our PT tests? Am I not giving the folks enough time to, do we need to start unit fitness? Like those kinds of questions are really good to ask.
Mm-hmm.
And you hit it right on the nose when you said it doesn't matter if it's red or green, it just is. And finding
Yeah.
out the why to why it is what it is and how do we fix it, right? So
Mm-hmm.
I think a lot of people you don't want to present negative information, right? That's not as much fun as presenting positive information. But
Yeah.
but presenting the truth is what's most important.
Yeah.
So
Yeah.
creating an environment that allows your team to be able to present you the truth is very important. And
Mm-hmm.
as leaders, one of the most important things that we can do is when someone comes to you with something negative, it's not
Yeah.
personal and not
Yeah.
taking it personal.
Yeah.
It is what it is. Take a step back and take a breath if you have to, and then go, okay, why is it like this and what can we do about it?
Yes. Oh, I love that. I love that. It's like, I'm gonna put that in quotes. So when we think about, like, we've gotten to the point where we've decided, like, maybe you're in a job where you've got to be a little bit more hands-on, and you've got to touch data, or at least you are not the final, like, decision maker, so you're going to have to maybe speak on it. What are, like, simple ways to present data so people can actually understand it? And I
Mhm.
know, like, very familiar, or everyone has a scale of familiarity with Microsoft, but
Mhm.
if, after this, I just wanted to kind of hop on and start to move past like a simple pie chart, what would you
Mhm.
recommend?
So there's actually a fantastic book,
Mm.
actual printed book, called Now You See It by Stephen Few. And
Okay.
in it's a great book. It's an easy read, and he
Mhm.
really just talks about keeping it simple.
Okay.
So I have a lot of people who love data, but they will stand up in front of a group of people who don't maybe know anything about what they're presenting, and
Hmm.
their visualizations are so complex that they
Mm.
have to spend a long time explaining what they're showing. And that's not the whole point of visualizations. The
Yep.
whole point of a visualization is to be able to look at it, read the legend, read the axes, and be able to ingest it. So,
Okay.
not too many colors. Make sure you label your axes and have a legend. I should be able to look at the screen and understand what I'm looking at with maybe a couple sentences of explanation. That
Wow.
is very important. Now, if you need to break up your data to do that, that's okay. It is
Okay.
okay to have more than one visualization, but you don't want to crowd it with so much information that the general population can't understand what they're looking at because you'll lose your crowd.
Yep.
And the last thing you want is when you're talking to a decision maker is for them to check out.
Yeah. Oh,
Then you failed.
ugh.
That's
Yeah.
not good.
I remember sitting in a briefing and this general officer asked a question and the guy was a little bit his response
Analytical.
was, yeah, his response was, well, you just don't understand it. And I just
Oh.
remember almost all the oxygen went out of the room, and the journal
Mhm.
kind of came back and said, well, the way that I was taught it is that if you can't explain it simply, then you don't understand it very well. So
Ouch.
it
But he's
almost
not
stuck with
wrong.
me. Yeah,
You
like,
you have to
oh,
take it back, right? And so I think in the program that I was in, there were
mhm,
folks that were so smart and so, very detailed, and sometimes they would have a hard time explaining it very easily. But that's what I'm good at. So
yeah,
we would work off each other, and we would kind
mhm,
of, like we would pair together, and one person would explain things a little bit more complex,
yeah,
and then I would go, in layman's terms, this means you need more folks.
yeah,
Like
yeah.
that kind of thing. It's great to have that data centric person, but
Yes.
if you know that that's your weakness and you're not able to take it down and just explain it basically, bring in somebody, call in for help.
Yeah. Yeah. That whole partnering I think is fantastic. Just that concept,
Hmm.
right? I mean, we do that. We create cross-functional teams across the
Hmm.
military to be able to, hey, let's bring in these different individuals. And so why wouldn't you do that when you're talking about data?
I think also two brains are better than one, and no
Mhm.
one thinks the same. And having differing minds asking different questions really
Mhm.
helps you get a more meaningful and well constructed product. Because I was actually just talking to someone earlier this week, and I was
Mhm.
asking very specific questions about combat support training that we're starting to build up and work on.
Mhm.
And I was asking very detailed questions about training and tracking and things like that. And the individual I was talking to said, "Wow, do you always ask these detailed of questions?" And I said, "Well, yes, when I'm going to be building products for you, yes."
Yeah.
And she said,
Yeah.
"I didn't even think of it like that." And I said, "Well,
Mm.
that's why we work together then."
Yeah. Yeah, yeah. So you're thinking about those. I'm curious. Do you think about the requirements first, or how does your brain like? What's the process? You realize you have to make a product, right? And then what's the next thing that your brain goes to?
So I actually wrote it down.
Okay.
Okay, so first what I think about is what question am I trying to answer
Okay.
initially?
Hmm.
Okay. And there's probably 8 million questions within that.
Yeah, yeah,
Then,
probably.
what
That's
is the
especially.
root cause of this
Okay.
question? Because
Mm,
the question someone asks you isn't really the problem. You have to get there. So you walk through that process. Then, what will I do with the results or the answer? Because that's really what you're showing in the end. So once I find your answer,
mm-hmm,
what do you want to do with it? In a
mm-hmm.
perfect world, whether it's
Okay.
what you're hoping for or what you're not hoping for, what do you
Okay.
want to do with it? Because that will determine how you utilize the data.
Mm,
Because if you're looking to just show something, that's a different route. If you're
yeah.
looking to action something, that might be a different route. So you have to be very specific and very deliberate about
Mm,
what you want to do, you or your customer want to do with this information so that you know
mm,
what path to go on. Now, unfortunately, because we are humans and we make mistakes, sometimes we don't find that out until we've built something and they go, oh, this isn't what I wanted.
yeah.
And you go, oh, okay. And then, unfortunately, all too often, you go, oh, I'm sorry. Well, what did you want to do with this information? Then you have to course correct. So trying to remember that
True.
question in advance can
Yeah.
save you a lot of pain and heartache in the long run.
Yeah. I mean, I you do make me think though, there are some people that don't know what they want. Like, and they'll
All the
communicate,
time.
I'm not sure what I'm looking for, but I'll know it when I see it.
Actually, I really like those. And
Yeah.
this is why.
Okay.
Because that means that they're open
Okay.
and they're pliable. I
Mm.
really prefer working with that type of customer over,
Okay.
I want to see this and I want it to look like this and I want it to be like this and I want it to tell me this. Because
Constraints.
then they've already decided what they think the data is, and
Yeah.
I can't work with them because
Mm.
they are closed-minded and rigid.
Yeah.
But if somebody says, I don't really know, I just know that there's this data that exists and I want to know what it will tell me, that's
Hmm.
we can work with that.
Yeah. Well, it is an iterative process. I mean, I can't
Absolutely.
think of a product that you've created that you haven't then, oh, this is 1.0, this is 2.0. So very, very
Absolutely.
kind of agile, like versus the, you don't build a house and then say like, well, let's knock down half of it again and then
Yeah, we do.
redo it
Yeah,
and it
no,
gets so
that's and
bad.
that's the good thing about all of these different platforms, right? Is everything is kind of
Mhm.
pliable and moldable. There was a situation I was working with in regards to childcare in the military, which is always a very important
Oh, yeah.
topic,
Hot
and
topic, hot topic.
everybody wants to talk about childcare. And
Mhm,
where I
mhm.
work, that we are in charge of that, and they were showing some information to a large audience of varying degrees of understanding.
Okay.
And I leaned over to the deputy director and I said,
Mhm.
hey, if you just change these two things about this,
Yeah.
I don't think you'll have to explain this at all. I think it will explain itself. And
Mhm.
it did. It worked. It worked perfectly. It was just a real quick, easy fix. And sometimes
Yeah.
just little tweaks on data you already have, but little tweaks to make it easier for everyone to understand are really, really important and helpful.
Mhm. Yeah, that almost just like in marketing, they do beta testing where it's like you'll like look
Mm,
at two images and then which one does that person click on. So that's interesting to see that our brains are the same way with pictures of data as well. And
mhm.
it's like, oh, okay. Um, if the person, how long do they look at something before they ask that question or understand it to make that adjustment?
Yeah, it is. It's like marketing. I like that analogy.
So, tools. Let's talk tools. What do you
Yes.
recommend to start with? Obviously, lots of stuff out there. Some of it's free, and then some of it does have a tail to it.
Yes. So, like I said, I am not a math, tech,
Hmm.
super nitty gritty data person naturally. So I navigate towards fun, pretty, colorful things by default. because am in the military and I work, we are very close with Microsoft. I utilize Power BI. Power Automate is fantastic. Really, anything in the Power Platform suite of products that they have, because they all talk to each other, which I really appreciate. Not having to digest or change anything and just have them automatically flow is right up my alley. However, if you work in the private sector or in the civilian world, Tableau is a very similar product to Power BI. It's very easy to learn and understand, and there's tons of videos out there about it. Now, if you're looking to do a little bit more nitty-gritty data type stuff, whether you're doing some linear models or something like that with your data, both R and Python are great products. They're relatively easy to use. Again, there's tons of videos, free ways to learn how to use them, and they're all on the public platform and easy to understand, and the data is easy to extract. So those are products I recommend. Also, highly recommend, like I said before, Copilot, ChatGPT. If you're on the military side, Nipper GPT or Camo GPT, all fantastic products, because I think what a lot of people think is that they need to be an expert. That is not true at all. I will tell you, even now, I still have to look up things because my brain can't remember anything. And that's okay. There's a way to remind myself, oh, that's right. That's how I do that, or that's where this button was, or whatever. It's impossible to be a master of everything. You do not have to be a master of everything. The internet will help you.
Yes.
Utilize the tools that are out there.
Yeah.
Yeah, there's so many different options out there. If you work for a company or you have a company that already has licensing with Tableau, again, it's a great product. If you already work for a company or have a company that already has Microsoft 365, you have a suite of products that are available to you. Power BI integrates with PowerPoint seamlessly. It's very easy to use. Power Automate will save you or your team so much time with meticulous tasks. It is truly a lifesaver.
Yes.
Highly
Yeah. I'm
recommend
excited.
Power Automate.
Yes, I'm excited. I'm gonna have you on again and talk about Power Automate because it is one of those things where we do so many tasks repetitively,
Hmm.
and by nature, that's what machines kind of end up doing better than humans. So
Yes.
I'm pumped to jump into that, and I just man, like it's really really cool to I guess encouraging that you can be someone that doesn't feel like they're a data person and still
Hmm.
be able to operate in that. And just the future, right, as we have a lot of people that are still very uncertain about artificial intelligence, and
Mm.
the foundation of AI is data. It's like
Hmm.
that's what it's pulling from. And so it's just really been cool for you to talk through a foundational skill set that will help us become more comfortable with AI. And I mean, you just really reminded me of this concept of, if you start work and you don't have a large language model up next to you,
Mm.
then you're already at a disadvantage. Like, why wouldn't you? Hey, I'm not sure how to display this information. Why
Mm.
wouldn't you ask Copilot immediately instead of having to just struggle and click around? Like, that's time that you really don't have
Yes.
in the day.
Yes, absolutely. And I think, again, at the foundation, being able to ask questions,
Hmm.
productive questions, searching questions,
Yeah.
feeling questions, and find out, first of all, does the data exist? Okay, yes, the data
Hmm.
exists. What can we do
Hmm.
with this to make our lives better? What can I do to help my organization? And then it's okay to mess up. That's the other thing too. It's okay if you don't get it right the first time. It's okay if you built your process completely wrong because you accidentally put a formula in incorrectly. Been there. It makes you crazy, or you can't get something to work. Happens to me all the time. But you take a break, you walk away, go swear a few times, and then come back and rework it.
Yeah.
Um, but I don't, a lot of people will allow the fear of
Mhm.
either inability or the fear of possibly getting it wrong to completely stop them. And that's not productive. It's okay to make mistakes. It's okay to not know what you're doing. It's okay to ask for help. I ask for help all the time from so many people because there are so many people that are so much smarter than me. And thankfully, I count a lot of very smart people as friends, and I reach out to them all the time, like
That's
you.
yeah. But it is, it's that partnership, right? Like divergent
Mhm.
thought, being able to say, hey, what am I missing or what are you seeing? And so I jotted down something when you were talking is like data is like a team sport or data analytics is a team
Mm,
sport.
mhm.
There are certain things that we try to do on our own. And I just want to encourage everyone, like, as you're going into this, just don't do it alone. Have a large language model. Have a nerdy friend. Or someone that likes data, or someone that's enjoys it, to be able to just jump into it. Because on the other side, it's like you jumped in, you did it, right? And now you're on the other side, and it's like, okay, cool. Like you've got that much more depth and understanding of just how to operate and how to lead well in that time frame.
Mhm. Absolutely.
Yay.
Absolutely.
Well, thank you so much for being on today. I really, really appreciate it. Final, I think, words of wisdom that you have for those that are tuned in
Oh, final words of wisdom. Let me think.
today.
Uh, don't be afraid
Hmm.
to ask for help, and don't be afraid to make mistakes,
Hmm.
and have fun with it. Data can show you so many things. We have data coming out of our ears. You can use it to make your life easier. It's not here to replace you. It's here
Hmm.
to make your life easier and to take away the minutia so you can focus on more value added tasks to make your life better, your organization better, your leadership better, all of that.
Yeah. Oh, I love it. Well, I will leave Melissa's information down in the comments. So if you do want to reach out to her and pick her brain on anything data, please do so. And yeah, just put in the comments something that a question you have about data, and stay tuned with us for more fun things on data. Thanks again, Melissa.
Thank you so much.